So what we've been looking at in this section is slope. We've done all kinds of things with slope. Well, we did also do the function stuff where we decide if something was a function or not, the domain, range, those sort of things. We'll review that some tomorrow because it's been a little while since we did that. But the other big thing in this unit is slope. So like our unit rates, slope from 2 points, slope from graphs, slope from tables. That's all the stuff that was on your quiz today. And the last thing that we're going to do is being able to find a slope from an equation. Okay? So in order to find the slope from an equation, we are going to use the slope-intercept form of a line, which I believe you guys did last year. Does anybody remember what the equation of a line looks like? Y equals mx plus b. And in this equation, your m right here, that number, the number next to your x, that's going to be your slope of your line. And the b here, that is your y-intercept. And tell me what the y-intercept is. What does that look like on the graph?
It's where your line starts at 0 at the x at 0. So it might be.
It's where the graph crosses the y-axis. Okay, so it's where the graph crosses the y-axis. Your x-coordinate is 0 there. So if we are looking at our examples here, whenever we look for our slope, for all of these equations, for at least our first two equations, I've got all of these equations, I've got y equals right here. It is really important that y has to be by itself for you to be able to do this. Okay? So right here I can see that the number right there next to the x being multiplied by the x is 4. So for this one I would say that the slope is 4. The y-intercept is what we call the constant term. It's the term that's being added or subtracted here. So our y-intercept here would be -8. Sometimes it is written like this, just -8. Sometimes it may be given as a coordinate, which would be 0, -8. Because if you graph it, the x term will be 0, the y term will be -8. At a y-intercept, your x term is always 0. So we always have a 0 there. Okay. What about number 2? Negative what? No. Alright, first of all, what is f of x? It's just like our y. Okay, so this is just like y equals. So f is going to have nothing to do with this. It's just been called the function of f, the function f of x. So that's like, we're going to treat it like it's our y. Okay, so what we're looking at over here is this 9 minus x. Okay. Your slope is always a number multiplied by your x. So if I got 9 minus x, I'm going to write it a little bigger because I... Okay? What number is being multiplied by that x? Okay? There's nothing there, so we could put a 1 there. And so our slope would be negative 1. What is the y-intercept? It's 9. So it's not always the first number. It depends on which one's next to your x. Okay, questions on 2? What about 3? This is going to need a little work before we can do this, right? Okay, so we need to distribute that 2 first because we need this to be boiled down to y equals mx plus b. So y equals 3 plus 2x minus 8. And that's too many numbers. I got 3 numbers and I need slope and y-intercept. So I got to combine like terms here. So I'll have 2x, and I got a positive 3, negative 8 will give me a negative 5. Or you could write it negative 5 plus 2x. Either one's fine. Okay, so if you don't have everything combined, distributed and combined like it should be, you need to do that first before you find slope and y-intercept. Caitlin, what's the slope of this line?
Wait, how is it negative 5?
When we combine that positive 3 and the negative 8. Slope would be 2. Ian, what's the y-intercept going to be? Negative 5. Good. Again, or it may be given as 0, negative 5, depending on what your answer choices look like there. Okay, questions so far? All right. Okay, so an equation must be solved for y in order to find the slope and y-intercept from the equation. So you have to have the y by itself. So if you have problems like we see here, where they're asking you to find the slope and the y-intercept, but are any of these solved for y? They are not. So what you have to do is you have to get that y by itself. Okay? So if we look at example 4, I'm going to draw a line down through the equal sign here. And this y right here, that's what I want to solve for. So I'm trying to get that y by itself. When I solve an equation, I want to start furthest away from the y, but on this side, right? So I got this 2x. It is positive. I need to subtract 2x from both sides to move it over here. So when I do that, I'll have negative 5y equals, I can't put those together, so I just have to leave 10 minus 2x. Okay, this is like those literal equations that we did, or some of the literal equations that you did, where you're not going to get like x equal or y equals 4 most of the time anyway. You're going to get another equation, which is what you want because you want it to be y equals mx plus b. So y is still what we're looking for here. I need to get rid of the negative 5 this time. Haley, what can I do to get rid of that negative 5? Not for this one, because that negative 5 is right next to the y. So what does that mean when we have a number right next to a variable? Okay, it means they're being multiplied together. And to undo multiplication, we would have to divide. Now here's the trick you must make sure that you do. If I divide by negative 5 over here, I have to divide everything on the right side by negative 5, which means I'm going to divide 10 by negative 5, and I'm also going to divide 2 by negative 5. So that will cancel. And so y will equal 10 divided by negative 5 is going to give me negative 2. Can I do 2 divided by 5? I cannot. But this is a slope, and a lot of times our slope is a fraction anyway. So it's okay to leave it a fraction. Since I'm doing negative divided by negative, though, what should I have? Positive 2/5 times x. So, Lakeland, what's the slope of that line going to be for me? No. Slope is always multiplied by your x. So what do we have multiplied by our x here? 2/5. Sometimes, a lot of times the slope is first, but it's not always first. It's whichever one's next to the x. And then, Isabella, are you going to help me on this one, or did you have a question? Okay. All right, what do we get here? -2 for our y-intercept. Okay, questions? All right, let's try number 5. Okay. I need to solve this equation for the y. So I'm trying to get that y right there by itself. Anna Grace, what would I do first? Very good. So subtract that 3x. I can't actually subtract 12 and 3x, so I'm just going to write it 12 minus 3x. And then on that left-hand side, make sure you don't lose that negative, because we haven't done anything with it yet. So we've got negative y. Okay. Rosalind, what would I do to get rid of that negative that's over there with the y? Divide. So I'm going to divide everything by -1. Make sure you divide all the terms by -1. You will get y equals -12 plus 3x. Eddie, what's my slope there? Let them in. Let that food. Thank you. Put that in my
I
closet.
couldn't deal with being a teacher. I hate it. I know, I hate it. Y'all get
All right. Slope, Eddie, what would the slope be? All right. Eddie said 3x, and he is almost right. It never has the x with it. A lot of students say it's just the 3. Just the 3. And then y-intercept. Haley, what's the y-intercept? -12. Good. Okay. Questions on that one? All right. Next one. Okay, we got to get that y by itself. Kama, what would I do to try to get that y by itself first? Subtract what? We can't move the y. We want to move the thing furthest from the y, which is going to be that x. So we're going to subtract that x there. So that'll leave us with -3y equals 15 minus x. And then, Cameron, what would we do after that? Okay, we want to get this y by itself. It's going to stay where it's at. We got to get rid of that -3. How can we get rid of that -3? We're going to divide by that -3. All right, so y will equal 15 divided by -3 is going to be -5. And then I've got to, what did I do here? Aiden, what are we going to get? Positive what? One-third. Okay? Because that x, even though there's no number up there, it's like it's got a 1. So positive 1/3 x. Let's see, Riley, what's the slope of that? Almost. Don't say the x, just the 1/3. And then, Caitlin, what's the y-intercept? -5. Okay? We're not going to do all of these, but let's do a couple more that are a little bit different. We've already done one like number 7. Let's look at number 8. We'll also look at that one. Okay. All right, number 8. Let's look at it real quick. We'll look at that other one once we get there. All right. This one is not solved for y, but it looks a little different than the other 3 that we just did. Let's see. Savannah, what do you think we'll do first on that one? I would distribute. Okay, so you got y minus 3 equals 0.5 x minus, what's 0.5 times 4? 2. Finding half of 4. Savannah, what would we do after that? This y right here is what we want to get by itself. We're going to add the 3 over here. I'm adding that 3 to the -2 because those are my like terms there. So y will equal 0.5x. -2 plus 3 is going to give me a positive 1. So, Kaylee, what's the slope of that graph? 0.5, which is fine to give as a decimal or if you want a fraction, because sometimes if we got to graph it, a fraction's easier, it'll just be 1/2. And then, Kaylee, what's my y-intercept? All right, 9. It's solved for y, but it's weird. Okay, so what is the slope of that graph? Okay, I heard it guess. What do you think? It is 0. Because, can I write it this way? Y equals 0x minus 8. Would that be the same? If I had 0 times x, what would that give me? 0. And then 0 minus 8 would just be -8. So, if you are missing the x completely, your slope is 0. And what would the y-intercept be for this? It would be -8. Yep. G of x, they used a different letter here instead of f of x, but it's still just that function notation. So this is just like a y. So on number 11, Aiden, what would the slope be for that one? -3, the number next to our x. What about our y-intercept for that one, Aiden? It's 9. Okay. Let's do 10 real quick, and then we'll be done with our notes for today. I'm going to give you a worksheet, and we're going to do a few of those for homework. Not all of them, but a few. Okay. I want you to have a little bit of practice on your own. All right, so if we do this one, trying to get that y by itself, need to get rid of the x. Eddie, how can I get rid of that x? Thank you, Eddie. All right, so that's going to leave me a -y equals 6 minus x. And then, Eddie, I need to get rid of that negative. How do I do that? Not add. This negative is like having a -1 right there. So if you got a -1 right next to your y, that means those two numbers are being multiply together, so you got to divide. Okay? So you're going to divide by negative 1, which really just changes the sign of everything. So we get negative 6 plus x. Giancarlo, what's the slope of that line if we've got y equals negative 6 plus x? It's 1. Good. No number in front of the x means there's a understood 1 there. And Giancarlo, what would the y-intercept be? Perfect. Okay. So, so your assignment for tonight, okay? From that worksheet, I want you to do, quiet please, so you're with me. Hold on, freeze where you're at for a second and listen. All right, so homework for tonight, any 5 problems and tell me slope and y-intercept. Okay, you can do any 5 problems. You can do the first 5 if you want, but if you think number 3 looks hard, you can skip it and do another one that looks easier to you. Okay? So any 5 problems, slope and y-intercept for both of them.